If you are a city slicker thinking about becoming a farmer, this is an interview to tune into. Aaron Ash was owner and operator of Gorilla Foods, an award-winning plant-based restaurant in Vancouver, before he became a farmer. Even though Aaron knew he wanted to be a farmer for a long time since he was a little boy, he was the quintessential city slicker. In this interview, we dive into all his tips and tricks that he learned as a business owner that he is implementing into his farming practices, how to be more efficient on the farm with systems, how to grow nutrient-dense food by building super healthy, rich soil, and some of his challenges about being a new farmer. And then we also have a guest appearance by Bob Garthson, who helps coach Aaron through building healthy soil through the use of switchgrass. And Bob Garthson is a renowned biodynamic farmer who mentors farmers all across Canada and around the world. And he was part of this live interview that we did for Heart and Soil magazine. Aaron is a true inspiration and exemplifies the transformative power of farming. I'm Natalie Forstbauer, founder and editor-in-chief of Heart and Soil magazine and Heart and Soil Living. If you want to learn more about growing your own food or farming regeneratively, organically, and biodynamically, you can sign up for a newsletter for free at heartandsoilmagazine.com, or you can get more support through Heart and Soil Magazine or our Heart and Soil Regenerative membership. You make yourself an amazing day. Thank you for joining us for this interview, and be sure to subscribe to this channel if you're liking the interviews and to share it with your friends. Welcome to this conversation and interview with Aaron Ash, founder and operator of Coming Home Farm in Powell River, BC. He's a city slicker going farmer who has a wealth of knowledge to share with us, not just from a new farmer perspective, but as a business owner who owned and operated Gorilla Foods in Vancouver, BC for years, right, Aaron? Like, you're doing that for years, and you're supporting the local farmers and buying food from local growers and bringing it in, and really deeply connected to the value of nourishing food. And so this conversation is going to be diving into what it is that ignites the fire in Aaron to go from city guy, restaurant owner, to farmer, to dirt under his nails, and also what some of his biggest challenges have been farming as a new farmer, and what he's noticed is moving the needle the most in the nutrition quality of his food, and advice he'd have for new farmers as a new farmer. Like, what is it that is making farming easier for him, and what is it that is really helping him grow healthy, nutritious food on as large a scale as he possibly can in the way that he wants to, for himself and his family and for his community. So welcome, Aaron Ash, to Heart and Soil. We deeply appreciate you carving out the space to have this conversation with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you here. Tell us a little bit about your farm in Powell River.
Okay, sure. Well, it's so I'm on 24 acres. I've been here now 2 years, just finishing up the second season. This will be the third round of garlic planting. I came in the fall of 2022 to plant garlic, and then made the transition over that fall, moved here in the new year, and yeah, it's I guess been a family farm for just over 100 years, and it was a dairy farm, and it's been a string of different families over the years. The last family that was here from 1989 until just 3 years ago now. And yeah, I guess when I got here, I walked into, I guess, quite a long-running operation, where a lot of the facilities and infrastructure was already in place with walk-in coolers and greenhouses. There's 5 greenhouses. It was like a mixed vegetable and animal operation, I guess, over probably most of those years. One man I met, he's 93. He started working here in 1947, and he told me about pulling pulling stumps with oxen and yeah, clearing the land and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool. Um, and so yeah, when I came, there's about 1.3 acres of a field that has been in vegetable production over the last, I'm not sure how many years exactly. Um, and I've seen the sequence of the pictures of as each of the greenhouses was added over the years from the previous family, the bird family, they're called. And then the rest was, or yeah, was basically pasture. There's 2 big old barns, probably from the 1940s, that they had pigs and chickens and cattle and goats uh, in for the last many years. And so last year I turned over about 1.5 acres more and started preparing that field for a rotation of garlic. I guess I came with the idea that garlic would be a main cash crop, I guess, or like a main business center. And then this year I opened up another about 1.5 acres, and uh so
How many acres are you up to now then?
I guess there's about, what is it, one like about four, around 4 acres
That's a
that
lot.
is now opened. Um and so yeah, I could share all the challenges that comes with that.
Yeah, that's a lot because you're on your own pretty much too, right, Aaron? Like you're the main farmer.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I've had a
Yeah.
couple
Yeah.
helpers.
So
Yeah.
before we dive into that, I'm just so curious because you operated Grella Food, an award-winning organic plant-based restaurant in Vancouver, and you also published a recipe book under the same name. What inspired you to become a farmer? What, like, why?
Um, I guess it was like probably the mid 90s. Um, Growing up, sort of, yeah, probably like hearing like the environmental concerns, and yeah, there was a certain point I just started thinking about my food. I started thinking about and learning about, I grew up in Saskatchewan, where one is just surrounded by agriculture just by default. I grew up in the city. My mom was from a small town. I spent my summers out at my other grandparents' cottage at a lake. And so, being in and out of the city and traveling on those roads and stuff like that, you're always just surrounded by big grain fields. And, um, yeah, I guess my extended family more so was part of agriculture more. My grandpa, he tells a story about him and his brothers coming back from the war and looking at each other, being like, "Are you a farmer?" "No, I don't think I'm a farmer." And my grandpa then took up welding as a means to help farmers fix tools, and then he was kind of an inventor and like uh, created this business. It's still there. My cousin runs it, that like makes like grain trailers, um and so yeah, I was always on the peripheral of agriculture. I think my grandma was, she like, where my mom grew up, it was probably like a 1/4 acre garden, probably of the generation, and rural enough that I guess agriculture was a part of life. Like the root cellar or the basement was filled with jars of canned everything, and like I yeah, some of my earliest memories are in the garden, and being around that. Then I yeah, I guess like I was a teenager and I started thinking about food. I heard about animal rights, and that sort of like turned something on where I thought about like what people eat, what I eat. I remember coming home to ask my mom when I was 16, like, do some people not eat not eat meat? And so then we talked about vegetarianism, and then when I was 15, I had a day working in this chicken farm, and my job was picking up these chickens and bringing them to the guy with the needle. And so like witnessing the injections, and I guess probably in the 1990s was when GMO foods were first being launched. And so hearing of like the the concerns about that, and maybe the urban myths of Kentucky Fried
Mm,
Chicken, they grow four-legged chickens and like
right. So
uh,
your roots in agriculture are deep. And what was the moment though? What was the moment? Because you're in Vancouver, you've got this amazing restaurant, you've written the cookbook, and like what was a moment where you're like, I want to farm?
it was actually before that.
It was before that.
So probably when I was around, yeah, it was like when I was about 19, uh I started to think about moving out of the city and
Mhm.
growing food. And I think it was probably around like the idea of like I want to get off of oil.
Mm,
And yeah, just I guess recognizing things about the world that I felt like I probably wanted to drop out of or something like that. And in that same time, well, that was around the time I first found out about organic food. I know when I was writing, I was sharing how like I started growing things indoors
yeah.
and learning about soil and hydroponics, and realizing like, oh, I'm into natural things.
Mhm.
And I probably like knew about, or like was like putting all the pieces together about like our exposure to chemicals, and maybe that's why so many people are sick. And so I really like started to really believe in organic food. And I read this article in the paper. The first organic food store was opening in Regina, and I cruised over there on my bike. And a month later, I was working there. And um, and in that same time, I started to get into juicing,
Mhm.
and that was like all these things were coming together in terms of like the food we eat and our health and the ecology. And like to me, like organic food just seemed like it was the solution to so many problems that I saw in the world. And so, yeah, that I thought I wanted to move out of the city. And then I met a girl from LA and I moved there with her. And so all of a sudden I was in like giant city, and exploring the excitement of that. But that was where I started to realize, that was where I learned about, that's where I first saw the permaculture book by Bill Mollison. And I was, uh, I guess I started to see, okay, maybe we could find the balance. And we had two avocado trees in our yard and an orange tree. And I started to realize, oh, okay, there could be this like urban permaculture. Or I started to, I guess, see that we don't need to drop out, but we can like fix things from the inside maybe. And so yeah, I went on this winding sort of path, I suppose. And that girlfriend at the time was like, you find your passion. And she was the first person who ever like told me to do that. I started to
Oh,
wonder what my passion was, and realized like, oh, I love to go to the farmer's market
yeah.
and be around food. And that was kind of what, yeah, led me into uh I guess back into food in a certain way. Like in those
Yeah.
couple of years, I was like music and arts and like the world of, I don't know, entertainment or Hollywood or like
Yeah.
like film and music was my thing, but then
Well,
yeah, I
I
realized
was
I
just sorry, I was just gonna say what I would love about your story, Aaron, is how your love of food and also agriculture is just peppered throughout your journey, right? So you're looking at knowing that you want to farm, knowing that you want to be more connected to agriculture, and then noticing all the little ways that you can do it along the way, from just getting involved with the first organic health food store in Regina to growing avocado trees and noticing what you can do in permaculture, which brought you to clearly or Vancouver, right? Back to Gorilla Food and then to your farm,
Mhm.
coming home farm. And I know I cut you off in your story. Sorry. Did you want to
No,
finish
that's all
that?
right. That's all right. Yeah, and it was freezing a little bit here, but yeah, so then that I guess coming back to food, had some friends that knew I couldn't work so freely in in the States.
Hmm.
And they were like, we're having a baby. Why don't you come like keep our fridge full a couple times a week? Because we were always making food and spending time together. Uh, and then that was what led me to realize, like, oh yeah, I remember when I was 15, I was like, Mom, I want to drop out of high school and become a chef. And she didn't like that idea. And then I think by the time I left high school, a couple of years later, I probably had changed my eating style and chef school wasn't really what I thought about. But then realizing those few years later that food. And then I did a period where I was doing that, and he's like a pretty famous musician and her a film director, and that kind of like I don't know somehow gave me a confidence in my food making that led me to when I came back to Canada to sort out my uh, like green card and stuff like that. It it kept me in food. I kept making food for other people in Vancouver.
Hmm. So Aaron, one of the
And
things
yeah, I'm not sure. Am I cutting out
you're
a bit?
yeah, you're just cutting out a little bit. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Okay,
can now.
great.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So one of the things you said is you feel like discovering organic food and agriculture saved your life. What how did tell me more about that? How did it save your life?
Well, I guess I just realized like I was kind of yeah, I grew up through punk rock music and was probably cynical about the world um and that family business I told you about like as I I worked there for a couple of years and was like in that environment and realizing like this is not my future. Like we're also making trucks for the logging industry, and
Mhm.
I didn't really want to support that. And I was like, yeah, just seeing so much garbage being produced in the world, and it was like hard to find a place that was like doing good in the world. And and so I think that's what I mean by it saved me from like it gave me a place where I felt like I was contributing to the betterment because I feel like, so many of us get caught in jobs that we have to compromise and um you know, yeah, yeah, we all live on a like fine line of, our we're all consumers.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, somehow I felt like that was a place that was actually making the world better through business.
Mhm.
And yeah, so yeah, that's where I would say it saved me, saved me from my own,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
internal.
Yeah, very cool. And what you write about soil health being really one of the most important parts of growing nutritious food. Tell us about what you mean by that and what practices you've used to build your soil that have been most effective.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess like I was writing also like originally, like as I was reading books about growing, it was mostly about indoor growing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of described that soil is just this medium to hold the roots. And we could use pumice stones or lava rocks or rock wool cubes. And then we just need to feed the the nutrient solution to the plants and that grows them. And yeah, that didn't, I guess like over the years, then I've like kind of delved into nutrition and the idea of our soil health being uh not as great as it used to be, that people talk about like uh, I guess like vitamin B12 was one of those things that led me to make that connection between like the soil and the bacteria in the soil that then uh, helps either animals uh, make B12 or uh, I've heard about like had heard about like the demineralization of soil or yeah, just the depletion of soil.
Mm-hmm.
And um I guess over the years and quite a lot just in these last couple of years as now it's become more of a practical thing where I'm working with soil more
Mm-hmm.
so. Um that I've come to, I guess, like see this soil food web idea and understand that at the like in the earth, all these minerals are available, and now I'm starting to understand more that if we like nurture or feed the microorganisms, that those are what unlock the nutrients for the plants, and then the plants pass them on to us. Um, I I don't know if that answers the question about like the
Yeah.
connection of soil and so yeah, how do I work on soil? What I feel like I've come to realize is that like no matter what our soil uh, texture or properties are, it seems like adding organic matter into the soil, and I equate that with like eating fiber and to feed the prebiotics to our own gut biome. And so same thing is if when we're feeding the soil with fiber or organic matter, that's feeding all those microorganisms, which are the foundation of the the whole web and the whole food chain up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And one of the things I love about your life experience, Aaron, is you've just kind of dove into different eclectic practices from permaculture to CANF, and you're curious about biodynamics. You've definitely dove into organics. And I'm curious, what are some of your favorite things that you do that are easy to do, that are simple to implement, and that you feel are effective to really nurture that organic matter in the soil?
Well, I'm just experimenting with cover crops for the first time this year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I'd say composting, that's probably the most simple thing that we can do. And to uh, figure out that difference between, say, like green materials and brown materials, or like understanding that carbon to nitrogen ratio, that the carbon, the how those two aspects of plants work together. Um,
Can I ask you a question about that?
sure.
Have you ever had a compost pile not work out?
Yeah, I think for many years I just would just keep adding food scraps to the compost pile and never really thought about the carbon aspect of it. And yeah, I think I composted for many years, not knowing how to compost or like what the real idea of it is.
Yeah. And so when you're just throwing food scraps in, what did you notice? And
Oh, it smells.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just this like gooey mess.
Yeah.
And
And then so what did you find was a good ratio to work with?
well, I guess I've heard that like 20 or 30 to 1, somewhere in there
Mhm.
is is yeah, is a good mix. And I'm still definitely not like an expert or anything like that. And now I'm trying to do it on like quite a scale. So
Yeah.
that's a real challenge to figure out, like, can't do that with a pitchfork necessarily, or maybe you can, but uh yeah,
It's a big
so
job. Yeah. And what are you finding is working? Like what's helpful for you to get the ratios right?
um I guess just like a diversity of different materials.
Mhm.
So I guess what I did this year was I mowed uh quite a like as I was clearing those patches, those new field blocks. I mowed them, and then I hand raked 2 acres of grass. That was quite a job.
That's
And
impressive.
then I've been getting a tree company. They've been dropping off loads of wood chips for the last 2 years. And so I've been accumulating those. The past farmers, they left like I don't even know how to like quantify how much it is, but these a big giant bay full of mixed, like mostly cattle manure, but there's goat manure in there too. And then like a couple chicken houses that were filled with like deep with manure on the floor.
Yeah.
Uh, and then yeah, and then all the like weeds. And yeah, and my neighbor has a landscaping company, so he brings me grass. And so yeah, and then my sister-in-law, she trained with Elaine Ingham and has a soil uh I guess like consulting company. She was actually talked on your
Yeah, Joe.
yeah, Joe
Joe
Tobias.
Tobias. Yeah.
Yeah,
Is she
we
helping you?
soil. She like, that's our dinner conversations when we hang
Yeah, you're like,
out.
Joe, come over for
Everyone else
dinner.
is just like, okay, okay. um,
Uh,
and so yeah, she has helped a lot for sure in yeah, just like bouncing ideas off of. And
mm,
yeah, kind of yeah, getting me to, yeah, I guess like I feel like, yeah, understanding like anaerobic versus aerobic
mm-hmm,
composting
mm-hmm.
and microorganisms.
Yeah.
Uh,
So are you finding like with the adding the carbon, are you finding like layering it is helping or mixing it up is helping or um are you
yeah,
just
when
doing
she
it all
first came
together?
out, we built the cages, and,
Okay.
and so did the layering, and like 1 yard at a time, and then
Mm-hmm.
like let it heat up, uh and then turn it and put the inside like make sure the outside layer goes to the inside, and the 3 times to do the thermophilic composting.
Yep.
And then the next sequence after doing that, so she I guess made me understand that we can spread those biologicals or those microorganisms easier through making compost extracts and then spraying them
Yes.
and inoculating the soil with that as a that so it seems like that's an easier way to cover a lot of ground without needing to spread all that organic matter. And she's probably the one who made me realize, like, oh yeah, it's the biology in the compost more than the organic matter that is like, or I don't know if it's more, but like that's that's the benefit of compost, is the sort of like the culture that's
Mm-hmm.
that's there, and inoculating the soil.
Mm-hmm. So
They
true.
can, yeah,
So
keep
true.
stocking the minerals and stuff like that that's in the ground.
Yeah. And Aaron, as a new farmer, what's been your biggest challenge?
Uh, who is it? Weeds, or is it deer, or is it the bears? Um, the overwhelm of all the things that need to be done all at the same time. I'm definitely like an ambitious person and didn't listen to all my other friends who were like, okay, just tone down. You don't need to grow 100 things in your first year. But like they all did in their first years, for surely grew all the things. And the seed catalogs are kind of like a used bookstore to me, where like it's hard to stop.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I don't know which one is the biggest. I had a 8 by 8 greenhouse in the city, and so that was my biggest greenhouse. And now I have 5 greenhouses, so like 10,000 square feet of greenhouses. So that's been new, I guess. Like, yeah, probably the overwhelm,
Mhm.
the
So how are
mental
you,
game.
yeah, so how are you dealing with that overwhelm? How are you overcoming that?
I guess just recognizing we can only do so much. Um, and just one thing at a time. Um, sort of like probably breath work and meditation and like self-care practices or whatever. I know that's something you talk about in your soil summit and stuff like that. I appreciate that. Because
Mhm.
yeah, I really feel like that's a big part of it. It's probably really good that like that is my background, I suppose, is like holistic health practices, and having, yeah, run the restaurant had already prepared me for like a lot of moving pieces and figuring out systems. And I kind of give that, that my grandpa's like welding factory credit to like making me see the sequence of events to happen in a production line. Um,
Yeah, I think that's really a powerful, I think that's one of your superpowers, Aaron, that you bring to the farming space is that perspective. And I'm curious, like what systems have you implemented that you would see transferable over to other farms?
um,
And maybe it's not like you do A, B, C, D, but it's like zooming out a little bit and saying, oh, this can be systemized and that can be systemized, you know? Or I could ask it in a different way. I could say, what are some of the most helpful and efficient systems that you've implemented to move the needle and to keep things going smoothly on your farm?
um, Well, I'm like one thing that's in progress or process is I would like to automate some more things. Like some of the watering. Like I've definitely like been in bed the first year at midnight and like, oh, the water's still on in the greenhouses or whatever. And so like setting timers, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And so it's like I was at first gonna say like thinking about fertility as the foundation system to it all. Thinking about like soil health being the foundation. I think that is helpful for people. Um,
Tell
and
me more about fertility. What do you mean by that when you say fertility to be a foundation?
I guess like what's gonna feed the plants.
Mhm.
And so thinking about the soil, thinking about the compost, like for me, I'm trying to eliminate, that's what I appreciate so much about biodynamics, is that closed loop system. And
Mhm.
um, so thinking about the composting and the microorganisms as sort of a foundation for, if the soil is healthy, then that's going to give the plants a better chance to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
and that's gonna help with like pest pressure, if that's a thing. If the idea, if healthy plants aren't as vulnerable to um, insect pressure, or like if insects like to attack sick plants, then that sort of like solves that, or it at least helps with that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then yeah, I guess thinking about like if like I've come into a farm that tillage was a big part of the system, and so like the weeds are like bonkers actually. And so that's a huge thing. And so figuring out that system, like thinking about the bed flipping and the, yeah, I guess thinking about long-term systems is something that's probably smart for people to consider. Um, and rather than like running on the treadmill
Mm-hmm.
of like weeds are overwhelming, so then you till it, bring up the seeds to the top, till it again. Like, yeah, that seems like kind of a never-ending cycle one could be in. So
Mm-hmm.
I haven't figured it out yet, the like how to like reduce that entirely, or how to like move. I feel like I'm inspired by the stories of the no-till systems, or the low-till systems, where people claim that they're not dealing with weeds as much. Um, and so, yeah, that would be another aspect of that composting. So like if you could figure out your composting system as a foundation, and then to be doing that top dressing method, that then you're keeping those weed seeds in the soil further down and you're building up, then it makes sense that then that's going to reduce your workload later on.
Can I ask a couple of questions? What I'm
Yeah.
seeing here. So uh, I really enjoyed hearing what you're saying, and I work with a lot of young people on this. So the question is just some basic questions. Do you intercrop your fields, or do you crop one section with broccoli and another section with carrots and other sections? That's the first question.
Um, I guess like as far as the, I guess, intercropping things I've tried so far has been like probably just like I have quite a bit of space, so like that hasn't, like I've intercropped, I put in the basil between the tomato plants. That's like one example. And like I've been mindful of like rotating the families. Is that what you mean by like rotate,
Well,
or
yeah, to some extent.
interplanting?
I mean, obviously there are rotations important, but I'm talking about if we take a garden bed. In my practice, I had beds that were 50 feet long by 12 feet wide, and
Mhm.
I would often have anywhere from 5 to 10 different things growing in that bed, and which all different uptakes, different benefits to each other, but also much more like the indigenous method.
Uh-huh.
So that I just that I raised that question. The other thing is, have you ever measured the impact of regular turning a compost in terms of microorganisms comparing to letting that compost area sit?
Not yet. I just got a microscope, and so
First,
that's something I'm excited to be uh yeah, like testing that to see like different
so
seasons, different, yeah, different.
it'd be interesting if I'm just commenting on that. It'd be interesting to see whether you notice that the more you turn the compost,
Mhm.
the fewer microorganisms you
Right,
have.
right.
Okay. So I'm just raising that as a question, okay, for you, and I
Mhm.
understand what you're dealing with in terms of weed pressure, which, my years of doing, I've been doing this for over 50 years. In my experience is that's always the number one issue, and that's the one that deters people from continuing.
Mhm.
So have you used, in terms of cover crops, you talked about that, I've been doing, have you used something like a fall, and maybe given your space, a spring biomix? So instead of putting one thing down, you put a number of things together that you plant that complement each other when they're in there, but also create the what you need from a cover crop. Have you ever tried something like that?
Not yet. That was my intention. I was a little bit late to get my. So I got oats and peas and clover. That I was, and then I was just too late to get the bed starters. But that's what I intend to in the spring, to put in like the one field that I'm gonna grow. Like I broke that. I used a plow, flipped that soil, and then I tilled it twice. And
Right.
then it was just a little bit too late to get those cover crops in. But my intention is to leave that growing with a cover crop and do that for a year to prepare that bed.
Yeah, let me comment on that. That I think if you look at like you can look at any site, but look at William Dam, they'll have different mixes. If you use what most often was recommended was winter rye. Winter rye has a couple of problems. One, you have to get it in real early. And secondly, if you don't get it out, it becomes a permanent problem. Okay. Right. So looking at a fall biomix, maybe something you could look at. There's two other things. Do you use kelp?
Not yet, but I was just thinking yesterday, I'm going to make it a practice because I'm 5 minutes from the ocean. And
okay, because organic kelp has microorganisms and it continually feeds, it doesn't burn. And just from my experience, and when I've had people do that production. Two other things. Do you start your plants? And I'm talking about squash, cucumbers, summer squash, that kind of thing, or do you put it in the seed? In terms of work, do you transplant plants, seedlings, or do you use seeds?
Oh, it just cut out there for a second. Yeah, I do. Did you ask, do I do my own starts?
Yes.
So I think, can I clarify the question? I think he's asking, do you, Aaron's frozen. You're so blessed right now to be getting coached and have Bob asking you questions because he's got decades and decades and decades of experience here. So I love these clarifying questions. He's asking if you start, like do transplants for like starts or transplants for your cucumbers and squash and stuff like that, or if you direct seed them.
Yes.
I've been doing starts.
Okay, so if you look at Aboriginal experience, Indigenous experience, they don't do that. So, and you actually end up getting often healthier plants because the key with all those plants is, are they too small or too big to adjust to the environment they're in? If they're seeded, they germinate when the temperature is right for them, and they do their own adjustments based on the microorganisms that are helping to feed them. And it affects workload, right? You said everything has to be done at the same time. So setting a schedule where certain things need to be done or not done is very, very important in terms of your overall space and what you do. I'm just suggesting that, to think about that very carefully. And if you look at the evidence, I work with a group, training a group of young people on a farm, which is now a charity farm. We grow for food banks and food boxes. And they've been amazed at how healthy their winter squash plants were by planting them from seed, for example. And that's just one thing. So there's like workload is a huge issue. The other question I would ask, and I've asked this before, have you ever read about or used switchgrass for mulch? The biggest problem is weeds. How do you solve the weed problem? Not cultivating, but have you used switchgrass?
No, I don't know switchgrass.
I think Natalie and I think we should have a workshop on that. Switchgrass is a native plant. It's nutritious. It covers the soil for much longer than anything else. I just put things on top of it. So I developed, so I had permanent bed areas that I didn't need to cultivate. I never use a rototiller. The only time we used a small tractor was when we were working in cover crops. But you don't have to actually cultivate the beds you're working with. You plant with, you part the mulch, and sometimes you part it in the spring a fair bit to let the heat in, but then you cover again. So tomatoes, huge problem with weeds because they're growing up right in close to the tomatoes. Peppers can't stand them. Eggplant can't stand them. There's some things that can. Carrots can't stand them. Why? Because you plant the carrot seed, the bed has been worked up and bare. The weeds are much more powerful than the carrots, germinate much more quickly than the carrots. And then you have a problem. And it's a particular problem if you have Queen Anne's lace in the area, because the carrots will become Queen Anne's lace and they're unedible. And even seed companies often sell seed that's mixed with Queen Anne's lace seed and carrot seed. Queen Anne's lace is wild carrots, unedible, inedible, not toxic actually, except for certain moths and butterflies. Okay. And the other thing is, do you grow, and I'm sorry I'm asking all these questions, but it ties to what you're doing. Do you grow things within your fields such as Mexican marigolds and Mexican sunflowers? Mexican marigolds deter many insects. Mexican sunflowers, when I first started growing them, people say, what are those? I said, what do you think the monarchs eat when they're in Mexico? So I grow them. In the fall,
Yeah, I grew a lot of
I've had as many as 100 monarchs in one area where I'm growing the Mexican sunflowers. So they're doing the work for you. That's what I'm saying. Those plants are doing the work for you. They're providing the diversity. So people often look at, well, how much money can I make if I grow a row of this or a bed of this? Right? Isn't that often the equation? The question is, how much of it is productive and how long a time is it productive for? I had tomatoes that produced early and were still producing 2 weeks ago. I want to talk about full production, like dozens of tomatoes. Not because I'm a genius, but because things were working for me. And I think that's the fundamentals of biodynamics, which I've been engaged in. Now, people use bokashi compost and other things, and they may help, and I've done all those things. But the key is the fundamentals that reduce workload and make you feel good about what you're doing, so you'll keep doing it and other people will do it with you. So I'm just suggesting some things to think about beyond what you're doing.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I'm gonna go back and watch the recording because my screen was freezing a little bit, and hopefully I'll be able to catch more of that.
Yeah, I love that, Bob. I was gonna ask you a question about that. Oh, did you direct seed those tomatoes?
No, I started the tomato plants, but I did them myself and I control. In other words, they weren't great, big, huge plants. Because of my climate here, this year I could have, but most years you couldn't do it.
Right.
Because of climate change, we're getting such hot weather that that's going to change the dynamic a little bit. But I started my own plants. The biggest mistake, people say, well, if I start them earlier, I'll get big plants. Last thing you want.
Yeah.
They take longer to adjust. They're prone to weather, wind, all the rest of it. They are past their healthy. When do children learn the most? In their first 4 years of life.
That's right.
Well, let's translate that into a tomato plant. When does it learn the most? Because these are thinking things. People differentiate between animal and plant. Plants think. How did they survive for millions of years if they couldn't figure things out? So we have to work on that. But if you plant them, and if your plant is a little bit too big, you bend the bottom of the plant and the root and plant it. Don't plant it straight up and down. Only be left with a small plant, which then will produce underneath all the root systems it needs to support that plant. So it's not and it's also a question of variety. And one of the things I do a lot of work with people, they say they have trouble with this, trouble with that. It's the variety. There are so many varieties of lettuce, for example, some for early season, mid-season, late season frost. Brussels sprouts. They plant their Brussels sprouts. They say they never get any. Why? Because they didn't pinch the top off. And they were waiting for them all to be ready. Well, that looks good in the store with a great big stalk. But if you don't pinch the top off, you won't get production. And if you don't take the ones off they're ready, they're going to spoil and rot and affect the rest of them. Right? So that's basic chemistry, right? And it's biodynamics because they're looking at the whole system as opposed to looking at one product. end product. I'm going to start this and I'm going to start my plants. And I had a guy I'm a director of the National Farmers Union. I had a young guy farmer said, last year I decided I was going to start my tomato plants real early, and I had them in great big buckets. The production was less than if he'd done it the right way. So he had a few tomatoes to sell a week early, but the plants quit. Right? Because they weren't allowed to develop naturally. I had paste tomato and brown tomato plants out there that were as productive in the end of October as they were in July.
Wow.
That's what you're looking for. That's what you're looking for. Because then there's vitality. I had squash stored for 2 years. I grow sweet potatoes. That's one of the favorite things that I do.
Wow.
And they'll be going in sand. They will store for up to 2 years, and I can start my own plants. My sweet potatoes, I had ones that ranging from 2 to 4 pounds each in Canada.
That's so cool. I love
So that's the kind of thing you want to add to the menu. One, because they're highly nutritious, but also they bring in living things that are attracted to them. And you know what? They aren't potatoes. So the leaves and everything is edible, which means it's edible for humans, but it's also edible for the things. So you leave the leaves, if you don't use them all, you leave them on the ground for a while, and living things live inside them and eat them. Just like rodents and mice will live in sweet potatoes because they've got something healthy to feed the babies all winter, right? So you got to know when to get them in and when to get them out. Those are things that will help you and will increase the the economic value that you put on your work.
So true. Thank you for that, Bob. I'm just going to bring it back to you for a hot minute, Aaron. What has been what's been most successful for you in your new farming journey? Where have you experienced the most success?
I think he's frozen.
Yeah, he froze for me too. Did you hear me, Aaron?
Yeah. What's been the most successful? Yeah. Well, I guess what has been the most successful? In terms of crops, I feel like this year I did really well with carrots. But like overall, I think what's been successful is the relationships that I've been creating with the community and I guess like the support that I've been building or we've been building. Lisa is a huge part of I guess like the personality of the farm and business and everything, and a big part of the culture of our farm. She's a painter and artist, and so we last year had a booths next to each other at the farmers market, and so yeah, I feel like I would say that's the biggest success in terms of yeah, I guess like the business and the culture of the farm. Yeah, I heard a biodynamic farmer from Tennessee recently speaking, and he talked about we need to be growing community as part of our farms also. And
amen to that. Absolutely. Yeah. I love that has been one of the cornerstones of your new farm. Is so powerful, because that is ultimately what farming is all about, right? What life is about is community.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's a hard thing for a lot of people to do, is because their heads are down, their hands are in the soil, and sometimes it's kind of overwhelming to think where to start. So where would you suggest somebody start to build community?
And they have day jobs.
That's right. And they have day jobs. Yeah. So how do you build community, Aaron?
I think mostly, like in a big way for me, it's just showing up at the farmers market. It's on Saturdays and Sundays through the summer, and then Sundays from October till May, it's indoors. And then I'll be at that as long as I can. I took a few months off in the spring last year. And And then I feel like that's the biggest way, but in addition to that, I suppose like just being open. I love people, and so when like we have a farm stand, and if I see a car coming down the driveway, even though I'm like, I just came back from talking to somebody else and I have to get this weeding done or these things transplanted or whatever, but I still go over and check in and make sure that to communicate and connect. Lisa has been maintaining and super active on our Instagram, which is probably, I guess, and it goes over the Facebook too, but like, yes. So thankfully she's been a huge supporter in that sense. And yeah, I guess those are the biggest ways is, yeah, or like, I'm just trying to think of any community involvement. Yeah, like I'm a little bit asocial in a certain, or just my head is down for sure. So there's not tons of events or anything that I probably go out to, but
I guess I'm curious, have you incorporated having volunteers on your farm or donating any extra food or anything like that as well?
yeah, yeah, well, yeah, so that was one thing when we were, yeah, I have taken food to the food bank, like a few times or whatever, a bunch of times. And when we were cleaning the garlic this year, I put a little message out to the neighborhood Facebook group. Like where we live, it's sort of like the city's kind of broken into 3 sort of zones. And so we're in sort of like this little, like a little bit, sort of feels a little bit rural zone of the city. Or it was originally like when the mill was established, that's what how this town or city was formed. And this was the agriculture community where all the Italian families settled, and so there's all these old amazing fruit trees and everything from them. But I put a message out on the Facebook group saying, hey, if anybody wants to come be a part of this, and we could do trade for your winter supply of garlic, or could pay you or whatever. But it was sort of like a invite to create community. And so there was, yeah, one afternoon where like at one point there was, I think, like 11 people, and there was like a mom and her 3 kids. And yeah, there was like a handful of neighbors that all came. There was a bunch of people that were, getting paid already too, but it was sort of, yeah, that was like a community building sort of activity, I guess, that I did. And then I think that's the only like volunteer sort of thing that we've had so far. But I was saying like this farmer, I can't remember his name, this man from Tennessee, the Barefoot Farmer, his name is.
Yep.
Yeah. And yeah, he talked about they have an annual or like the 2 solstice events at their farm. And that inspired me. I said to Lisa recently, like, hey, maybe that could be a fun time, because yeah, I've been wanting to yeah, have some sort of community event here, but it's just time is a challenge too as well.
Yeah, time is a challenge. I just love how you started with what worked for you, right? Going to the farmers markets, donating some extra food, inviting your community to help harvest in exchange for food. Those are 3 really simple things, and really powerful ways to build that foundation. And Erin, what excites you most about farming and growing nutritious, nutrient-dense, delicious food?
I guess just probably being part of the solution to all the things. Like, yeah, like you say, I think relationships and community is that's the answer to everything. Like, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I'd say that. Yeah, feeding people. It brings me excitement to see people excited about food. Because I love food experiences too. And health is also the foundation. People could have all the financial wealth in the world, but like if your health is not there, or you could have as few of resources as possible, but if your health is there, then you're still thriving.
Do you have tastings at your market?
Yeah, I with the apples, I've been yeah, sampling is a super great thing to
Yeah.
do. I noticed a huge like appreciation, or like so many people are like, what is that? It's they never saw a kohlrabi before or something like that. And so then if they taste it, or all the questions about which apple is best for this or that, or are they crisp or sweet or tart. So yeah, having samples has been, yeah, a really great thing for
I
sure.
did that with daikon, and I was amazed how many were sold after people tasted.
Right?
Nobody would have bought, hardly anybody would have bought them until they
Right,
tasted
right.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, we've tasted lots of things from our farmers market too, but beets was always a really big experience for people because a lot of people just have negative experiences or thoughts about
them.
beets, and when they
Mhm.
taste what a real delicious, sweet, fresh beet tastes like, their minds are blown and their lives are changed. So that's so cool.
Even better when they're fermented.
Yes, this is
Yeah.
true. So true, Bob. What are you most excited about learning about, Aaron?
Lately it's been soil, like soil health, like soil management. Um, uh, yeah, I think. Yeah, that's been really, just because it's like I've so equated the like similarity between our own physical health and the soil health, in that like that connection of like, oh wow, these probiotics, or these like the gut biome and the soil biome, it's the same. And
Mhm.
realizing, wow, we really are all one. Like, and yeah, I think soil health has been
Have you ever had a
in the
meal
last
with
couple of
soil?
years.
Soil?
What, sorry?
You ever had soil for a meal?
Uh, Definitely on my carrots. No, I've never eaten a
There's a
meal.
top restaurant in Toronto, highly rated restaurant that serves soil as part of the meal. A
Wow.
restaurant called it Tinolite.
Huh. Well, I was realizing recently that like soil, it's one of the original art forms in our lives, making mud pies, and sand castles. Um, yeah, I was making that connection.
So true. Man, that's really cool. I love that, Erin. And what is there anything that you want to make sure we touch on before we wrap up today? We haven't covered?
Hmm. Um, I can't think of anything other than like I think it's great for people to grow plants, even if it's just one plant. I feel like there's like, if you just have that one aloe vera plant because you live in a skyrise apartment, I feel like that's like one little bit of connection to the earth,
Mm.
and to taking care of something outside of your own self. And yeah, just any little bit is great. Like just
Mhm.
having one cherry tomato plant or three cherry tomato plants, if that's all the space you have, at least at least don't limit yourself by that if you're in the city or anything like that.
I love that because you actually started growing a tomato plant in your closet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you write about that in the Heart and Soul interview, which I just love. And just to wrap things up, Aaron, what are some words of encouragement you have for new farmers?
Um, mm, yeah, probably just keep on going. I heard in a podcast last year, like, whatever you do, never give up in August, um, because you'll get through it. That was like, yeah, that was meaningful to me, actually. Um,
That's awesome. I love it. Well, I love your farm story, and I love how Lisa and you are sharing it on Instagram and with your community. And um I mean, the threads are kind of deep and wide with how you have been connecting in the organic space for a long time with different people, like from Annie Moss at Discovery to my mom and brothers and my sister. And it's just so deeply meaningful to see somebody having the courage to follow their heart and to follow their dream and to be having their hands in the soil and to be connecting people with nature and the nourishment of food and the possibility of health and really true riches and wealth in the foods that we eat and the community that we connect with and the relationships that we have. So thank you. Aaron and his partner Lisa are really good storytellers. So I encourage you to go and check out their website at cominghomefarm.ca and on Facebook and Instagram at Coming Home Farm. They share pictures and stories and really give you an inside look under the hood of what's going on at their farm and how they're making a go of it, from city slickers to farming, growing healthy, nutritious, nutrient-dense food for their families and for their communities. And Bob, it was such an honor to have you part of this conversation today and jump in with some great questions and some wonderful coaching. I just love that. And you're so deeply appreciated in our community. And oh, it actually brings tears to my eyes. So thank you for your presence.
I appreciate all you do, and I love to see young farmers being enthusiastic, and that's really part of my focus now in my life, is to bring young people directly engaged in the process.
Yeah, it's a big love, and thank you for your time today.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
Have a great day, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Namaste. Whether you're a farmer or gardener or a person who likes to eat, how can you connect more purposefully with your community in a way that elevates people emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually? It really is one of the cornerstones to thriving in life, is surrounding yourself with a powerful community. Know and trust that wherever you are in this very moment is exactly where you need to be, and just notice what your next step is in making healthier soil, in growing more nutritious food, and in connecting more deeply with your community, and in tuning into your heart and your inner wisdom. What are those next steps? And take them today. Live in kindness, live in love, and connect with nature. Big love. You make yourself an amazing day. Thanks for joining us at Heart and Soil. We love you and we appreciate you. You're welcome to join our newsletter for free or hop into our membership, where we support you with your regenerative farming, gardening, and personal well-being. Make yourself an amazing day.